Well, your son's masculine, so how do you think your attitude towards masculinity is going to work for him? You're going to treat him like he's a baby patriarchal oppressor, or that his ambition is part of the force that rapes and pillages the planet, and that's sort of, that idea sort of lurking at the basis of all your interactions with him? You think that's going to go well? That's the devouring mother from the Freudian perspective. That's not going to go well. And so it's good to remember, if you're a mother, when you talk about the patriarchy, you're talking about your son.
But even in boys' schools, even in education centres that are supposed to be devoted to good outcomes for boys, there is just so much unrelenting messaging about toxic masculinity and male privilege. I just wonder, what impact does that have on young men growing up?
Well, we know what impact it has on them. They just drop out. Why wouldn't they? Because, so imagine they're actually ethical, their boys are ethical in their fundamental orientation. So then they hear that their desire to engage in rough and tumble play, their desire to point and shoot at things, for example, which is deeply masculine, deeply human for that matter, because we point and shoot and aim at things. That's our entire physiological platform. We're hunting creatures. And that so your ambition is nothing but a manifestation of the corrupt and oppressive patriarchy. And as I said, you're part of the force that destroys the planet. If you have a shred of ethical sense and you're a young man, that's just going to stop you. It's going to just demotivate you. And in some sense, that's the purpose, because women who are afraid of men confuse competence with power. And then they believe that the road to peace is the antagonism to power. And because they don't discriminate between power and competence, they become antagonistic to their son's competence, and then, well, then they reap exactly what they sow. They end up with incompetent boys. Well, what went wrong? It's like, well, how about you discouraged every sign of competence, every chance you had? I read this account a while back. A woman author in the United States, whose name I don't remember, talked about just how difficult it was to stop her son from playing with guns. She said, well, I took every gun out of the house, or even anything that remotely looked like a gun, and that boy, you know, he'd take the toothbrush and shoot the cat with it. And how appalling is that? It's like, oh, you're quite the monster, aren't you? You saw something manifest in your son that was so deep, this desire to point and shoot, let's say, that despite your best efforts, you couldn't crush it. And then you didn't even notice that you were spending all that time trying to crush it, and it was so deep that you couldn't, and you still regarded what you were doing as a virtue. It's like, boy, your son, he certainly needs a new mother. That's for sure.